there, everybody. It's Dave from Nerdbox, and thank you for tuning in for this Popcorn Theory. Now, originally, this was supposed to be the horror remake show, part 2 in the Randy Live series, but you know what? Let's dive into every single clue that reveals that Stu is alive in the Scream franchise, and he's coming back in Scream 7. So this is one that you don't want to miss, and let's get to it.
Hello, Nerdboxers. Dave fell a little ill, so I will be running things today. But don't worry, Dave's illness won't stop us from having some twisted fun. It's time to explore every clue in my franchise, revealing that Stu is alive. Now it's time to discuss things you might not have connected about Stu to future murdering sprees.
Fuck you.
While Billy killed for revenge, Stu killed for fun and took pleasure in dropping just enough clues to see if anyone could guess that it was him. Whether it was talking about it taking a man to gut his victim, or how he cornered Randy into Billy at the video store with a smile. These traits are something that no other killer portrayed, but a voice on the phone did. That's a nice home Stu lived in, a $3 million one. A home that only a person with power and influence could own. Poor mommy and daddy wouldn't want their reputation hurt by having their son linked to such gruesome crimes, and did all they could to make people forget. Switch out the body and focus on the patsy to take most of the blame. It's really simple when you can pull some strings. After all, it's not like he was going to have an open casket, was he? Stu always had a plan about making a sequel.
Then he kills you and shoots himself in the head. Perfect ending. I thought of that.
You see, Sid, everybody dies but us. Everybody dies but us. We're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
Poor Randy. Too bad he was thinking with the wrong head. Or he might have figured everything out like Stu figured out his secret.
Do you think Sid would go out with me?
No, I don't at all.
There goes my chance with Sid. Damn it.
As if. That's all I'm saying. As if.
Oh, really, Alicia?
After Billy and Sydney had their little talk and did whatever, Stu snuck up behind him with his arms raised in the air, clutching his knife firmly in both of his hands, before striking at him with the knife. Something we saw no other Ghostface do, or did we? This is Stu's signature move, and we will reveal when he does it again in the future. Just like when he wipes the knife clean with his hand. The only person who saw this was Sydney, so how would Gail know to write it in her book? It's a simple answer. She didn't, and she never wrote about it. This is also the first time we see a staged fake death, which was all a part of the plan. So I bet you're wondering about the TV. Well, Dave and Jen already covered how Stu survived, with the chances of a TV killing him being 1 in 176,000. But if you are not convinced, we will reveal shocking new evidence behind the TV being a part of the cover-up. That bitch Sydney may have ruined things and the original plans for the sequel, but she wasn't going to forget what happened, like everyone tried to forget him. Sidney was going to need more than a little reminder than what was on the big screen or in print. Since they made money about his life, he was going to make his own movie, one that no one would forget.
Let's face it, man, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
Which is why they started to film the kills, beginning with Phil and Maureen outside the Stab premiere.
Everybody dies but us. Everybody dies but us. We're gonna carry on. We're gonna carry on. And the sequel. And the sequel.
That pussy Jason got it all wrong in New York. It's not Richie's film that needs to be finished. It's Stu's. Sometimes good help is hard to find on the dark web. Just ask Billy's mother and Mickey since they found each other there. Just like those that followed in Stu's shadow.
Hey, roomies. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
Yeah, because you died.
Kinda didn't. Though, it was a good way to get off the suspect list. I got Stu Macher's mask. He was my favorite.
Even though Phil and Maureen died, Sidney didn't get it, but she was about to, as were the others. Mickey went with Sidney and Derek to the Omega Kappa Beta frat party to establish an alibi while Mrs. Loomis got to play with Cece at the sorority house.
Who are you calling for?
What if I said you?
What if I said goodbye?
Why would you want to do that?
Why do you always answer a question with a question?
I'm inquisitive.
Yeah, and I'm impatient. Look, do you want to leave a message for someone?
Do you want to die tonight, Cece?
Only she wasn't alone. A third accomplice had to distract Cece on the phone while another Ghostface snuck in through the back door. After Donna left, it was time for some fun, and Cece was the dumb blonde who ran up the stairs. She made it too easy, so she was stabbed and thrown off the balcony. The poor little thing bled all over the knife, which is why it had to be wiped clean of the blood. Something we only saw Stu do before. The party was down the street from the sorority house, so what better way to let Mickey know that the deed was done and watch Sidney's reaction than to see it for himself, which is why we see a blonde-haired Stu walk past Sidney in the background. With Gail looking to leech off of Stu again, it was time to have some fun with her. But that poser Randy answered her phone instead. He did his best to stall things, thinking that Dewey and Gail would find Ghostface. But when Randy wanted to start hurling insults about this Ghostface being a poser, it was time to reveal who was on the phone, to see if Mr. Smartypants was as smart as he thought he was. The thrill of the chase only fuels our passion, but we must be careful when trying to hide our love for someone.
Is that the best you can do? Because Billy and Stu were much more original.
Only Stu knew about Randy's feelings for Sidney.
Do you think Sid would go out with me?
No, I don't at all. No.
And that little reminder that in the end, he still will never end up with her, lit a fire under him.
Why are you even here, Randy? You'll never be the leading man. Fuck you! No matter how hard you try, you'll never be the hero, and you'll never, ever get the girl.
Hey!
Randy got angry and responded with a personal attack on Billy and Stu, almost as if he knew that the ghost face on the phone was possibly Stu.
Oh, yeah? Well, let's redirect the moment, Mr. I'm So Original. Huh? Where's your innovation, huh? Why copycat two high school loser-ass dickheads? Stu was a pussy-ass wet rag. And Billy Loomis, what the fuck? Jesus. What a rat-looking, homo-repressed mama's boy. Why not set your goals higher, huh? You want to be one of the big boys?
After all, wasn't it Randy who said that the past will come back to haunt you? And because Randy challenged Stu by calling him a pussy, we see that there was no response on the phone because it angered him, which is why he was recklessly killed in the van where Stu could have easily been caught. And just to make sure it was clear to everyone that Ghostface was back, Stu left a calling card behind, his mask, something his future disciples would do too. After Sidney and Haley were taken into protective custody, Things go horribly wrong when Ghostface's plan comes to a sudden halt when he crashes into the K-rail. I say he, because Mickey is behind the mask here. Sidney and Haley manage to crawl out of the car, but that doesn't mean they escape their fate. Mickey kills Haley from behind and then chases Sidney back to the campus theater, where inside Mrs. Loomis and Stu are waiting. As Sidney walks towards the stage, Stu shines the stage spotlight from the back of the auditorium. Mrs. Loomis begins to manage the curtain and props from behind the stage. There would have been no time for either of them to have chased Sidney inside and then get into the position that they were. Mrs. Loomis would have had to run ahead of Sidney at some point, and Mickey would have had to have climbed a few flights of steps, so Stu already being there makes sense. We also saw that Sidney was slightly out of breath from running. So Mrs. Loomis and Stu distracted her long enough for Mickey to catch his breath and get into position behind Sidney for when Derek drops from the ceiling, without being heard or noticed, which happens pretty quickly after the light fades. Unfortunately, Mrs. Loomis did not stick to the script and she let her feelings get in the way.
Mickey was a good boy, but my God, that whole blame the movies motive. Did you buy that for 1 second? Poor boy was completely out of his mind.
And you're not.
No, I'm very sane. My motive isn't as 90s as Mickey's. Mine is just good old-fashioned revenge. You killed my son.
She got sloppy and allowed Cotton to go from slimeball to hero, ruining Stu's sequel. Cotton has become a thorn in Stu's side, and was going to have to be dealt with once and for all, which we will discuss next, along with when Sidney figured out that Stu was back.
How do you know you're not hearing things? How do you know I'm not someone in your head? Somewhere you know.
Don't come here, Sidney!
Stewie!
Or do you?
You're dead.
Cotton may have ruined Stu's planned sequel, but he would not have another chance to play the hero. Ghostface called Cotton under the guise of wanting to know where Sidney was, but if this was Roman calling, why would he need Cotton to tell him when Dewey is working on Stab 3 with him, and he would likely have Sid's number? As Billy and Stu said about the game of answering questions.
See, we ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, booga! You die.
You get it right, you die.
No matter the answer, you die. So whomever is on the phone is only toying with Cotton and is not the killer in the apartment, because we see Ghostface walk into the bathroom while talking to Cotton, and Christine never hears him talking. After Ghostface ties his loose ends, it's time to begin toying with Sidney and reveal what the new sequel will be based after. If you remember, Billy and Stu revealed that they did their homework before beginning their killing spree. One of those films might have been Psycho, which Billy quotes a line from.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
Anthony Perkins, Psycho.
Being that both of them are horror fans, it is safe to say that Billy and Stu had watched this together and considered their story being about Sidney, slowly slipping into madness because of visions of her dead mother. Sarah Darling, someone who deserved to die, and where we get additional confirmation of there being two ghost faces. Sarah is on the phone with one while hiding in the prop room, where our second ghost face is. Tell me how she does not hear him talking if there was only one ghost face. This happens again when Stone is talking to Ghostface on the phone in Dewey's trailer, and then is attacked from behind after mentioning Tatum's name. Having uncovered how the murder is tied to Maureen's past, Dewey calls Sidney to Hollywood, proving that Cotton's death was personal. Say maybe because he killed one of Stu's disciples and ruined his sequel. Sidney learns of the premise of Stab 3 and explores the set, which is modeled after the events that inspired the film. While looking out the window of her room, the door closes behind her, catching her attention. And as a precaution, we see Sidney use the closet door to secure the door into the bedroom. She slowly backs away, watching the door rattle as if someone is on the other side when Ghostface pops up behind her and pulls her through the window outside. She fends him off, runs back inside, where she is met by a second Ghostface who is hiding in a closet. Sidney manages to escape and is brought back to the police station, while Dewey and Gale go to Milton's mansion. It's here that they find a second mask, robe, and voice changer in a closet.
Sure is.
Dewey, do you have caller ID on your cell phone?
Yeah.
Use it and press send.
Along with Billy and Stu's dated phone, Ghostface makes his presence known, causing everyone to panic and split up. Angelina is killed off screen. We see blood dripping from her mouth, meaning that she was stabbed in the stomach. Remember that, because that would have covered the knife in blood. Ghostface finds everyone else in the bedroom and slashes Tyson across his stomach, leaving very little blood on his blade. Meanwhile, Jennifer Jolie falls into a secret hallway and then runs downstairs, as Ghostface tosses Tyson off of the balcony. Jennifer is forced to run back up the stairs after she runs into another Ghostface, who we see wiping Angelina's blood from the knife, while he walks behind her, like only Stu had done in the past. After disposing of Jennifer and catching Dewey and Gale, Ghostface calls Sidney, where he hints at his identity. First by saying,
"Oh, it's hard being friends with you, Sidney."
This is said in a manner that the person on the phone was her friend, because a stranger would more likely say it's hard for people to be friends with you.
When you're friends with Sidney, you die.
Stu begins to bait her,
Well, these friends don't have to, Sidney. It's up to you.
teasing at his identity.
Real? How do you know you're not hearing things? How do you know I'm not someone in your head? Somewhere you know.
Don't come here, Sidney!
Dewey!
Or do you?
Why would Roman say this? Sidney wouldn't have anything that would trigger a memory of him, but she would with Stu, and maybe she begins to realize it when she responds with,
You're dead.
I don't want them. I want you. It's simple.
Ghostface ends with his final clue, asking
You
Sidney,
want to know, Sidney? Who killed her? Don't you want to know who killed your mother?
As the mayhem continued to escalate, Stu's twisted mind reveled in the chaos he was orchestrating behind the scenes, always lurking in the shadows, ready to strike again with deadly precision. Remember, Roman later reveals that he is a director. He directs and never takes credit for killing Sidney's mother, meaning that the person on the phone is in fact Stu. A director would not say, "See the movie I star in," if they do not act in the film, and it is clear that only Billy and Stu were the ones who killed Maureen Prescott. Sidney takes the bait and goes to the mansion, where Ghostface is waiting for her. Ghostface lures her inside.
Throw it in the pool.
Ghostface eventually chases her into the study, where she discovers a hidden room behind the wall, where Roman waits. Like Roman said, he was a director, not a killer, so Sidney easily got the best of him. After another failed attempt to finish his sequel, Sidney goes back into hiding and Stu returns to Woodsboro to rewrite his sequel and to build his following on the dark web. When it comes time, he will be ready to put the robe and mask on once again, like he did here when we see a taller Ghostface attack Gale, which we will cover in our next episode.
Gale! Gale, behind you!
Roman may have been the director, but Stu was producing the real chaos in Part 3. They all tried to let go of the past, but it was time to unleash the evil that had been lurking in the shadows and let the disciples loose. In case you haven't been keeping up, there are some ground rules we laid out in the first part of this series, and we are going to expand on those right now. Starting with what you should be looking for and screen for, which is the varying heights of Ghostface. Dewey is taller than both Sidney and Gale. Sidney is taller than Gale and Jill. In the one scene where Jill plunges her knife deep into Sidney's flesh, they are standing next to each other, but poor little Sid is slouching. Charlie is taller than Jill, but is shorter than Sidney. Deputy Haas is the same height as Dewey, but Perkins is an inch taller. Make sure you write these clues down in your handy-dandy kill book. They will come into play later in this episode and the next. After Jenny and Marnie get carved like jack-o'-lanterns, a key detail was left out of the film. The crime scene where Jenny's body is hung from the ceiling fan, just like Casey Becker was hung from the tree. A little homage to Stu, or was it Stu himself? The next morning, Sidney arrives in Woodsboro in a rental car to promote her book, while Jill and Charlie are in school.
Oh, this is Hall Pass with Robbie Mercer. Here with the luscious Olivia, don't look at my tits, I have a my Morris. Here is my...
Somehow the evidence related to Jenny and Marnie's deaths is found in the trunk of her car.
Gonna need everyone to stay back.
Not now, Sid.
It's my rental.
Seems to me like a third accomplice is involved, because there are an awful lot of plot holes if there isn't. And how else would you explain the phone calls and every Ghostface attack after Billy and Stu? Which brings us to sweet, sweet Olivia. Jill is with Kirby when Ghostface calls from Olivia's closet in the house next door. But for some reason Olivia can't hear the conversation being had between them, and she is only a few feet away.
Kirby! Liar. I'm over this.
I never said I was in your closet.
This is reminiscent of Sarah, Christine, and Stone's deaths in previous films. After Olivia is gutted, Sidney comes to save the day, but it only leads to her and Jill being sent to the hospital, where we see Charlie and Robbie are outside filming for their blog before talking with Gale. Meanwhile, inside, Sidney and Jill are being looked at by medical staff. Due to the nature of Jill's wounds, it is likely that she is being stitched up when we see Sidney fire her publicist, Rebecca. Unfortunately for Sidney, she forgot what Stu warned her in Hollywood.
Oh, it's hard being friends with you, Sidney. When you're friends with Sidney, you die.
And in this case, Ghostface makes an exception by killing Rebecca in the parking garage before tossing her limp body off of the roof. If you were wondering where Robbie was when this happened, you can see him in the background of the police conference as the camera pans up. That person standing in the shadows, with luscious locks and wearing a hoodie, is most likely him, because that person is dressed similar to him from a few minutes earlier. Plus, the person throwing Rebecca from the building had to be strong enough to clear the bushes and sidewalk below because she landed on top of the van. And it sure the hell doesn't look like Jill has been lifting weights. I know you are saying that Jill should be done by now, and this deleted scene reveals that she was, but she was with her mom and her ex at the time. In another deleted scene, we see that the next night is Stabbath on. Charlie and Robbie had arrived at the barn early to set up.
Gives me the creeps a little, man.
I know, it's fucking perfect.
Gale arrives at the event just as it is kicking off, and we see Charlie and Robbie are hosting the event while she sneaks up into the loft to set up her cameras. The problem is that Gale wants to become relevant again off of the name of Ghostface. Only she didn't plan on our killers filming their own movie, like we discussed in the second part of this series. Ghostface sabotages Gail's camera, effectively luring her back inside and up into the loft. She passes by Charlie and Robbie, who are talking to Kirby while the movie plays. Gail goes to fix her camera but notices one that she did not set up, and it appears to be recording her. While she is distracted, out from behind a few hay bales, a taller than her Ghostface attacks her. As the events unfold at the barn, Dewey does not have enough time to radio to Perkins and Haas, who are killed by a shorter Ghostface, who is Jill, because she has snuck out her bedroom window. Ghostface calls Sydney, warning her that they are looking to kill her family this time.
Has it been worth it yet?
Why are you doing this?
Friends count, but it's the family ties that cut deep. Am I right?
What do you mean?
The ones you care about most, and what's closer than family.
Because this call is different from the ones we heard before. The ones where Stu brings up the past. Sydney goes to get Jill, but is only able to find Kate. They try to escape through the front door, but they see Ghostface approaching in the reflection of the wind chimes, forcing them to run for the back door, where they are met by another Ghostface, who would have had to run all the way around the house to get there. This is likely Stu, because it would have been quicker for Stu to leave Stabbath and go directly to Jill's, and because it is likely that Charlie would have been slowed by the police. Also remember, as we saw in the deleted scene, Robbie and Charlie drove to Stabbath together, so in order for Charlie to be under the mask, he would have had to have Robbie with him. In our final scene, Charlie and Jill talk about editing and uploading their kill footage.
Charlie?
Already taken care of. Man, I got great footage of my Robbie kill. Better than Jenny and Marty or Olivia even.
Good, we'll cutting up.
Uploading to where? Maybe to the blog, where Richie, Amber, Jason, and Greg all become radicalized. Sydney wins again, but Stu has everything for his sequel, except ending. As Sydney slinks away, it's time for another rewrite. In our next episode, we reveal how Stu, being the Ghostface in the hospital, could be true, and it was all revealed in the opening act.
Hello?
Bonus question, Tara.
Please stop.
Do you think I made it inside your house before?
Where did my Sydney go? When Ghostface calls Tara in the guise of being a friend of her mother's group, they start chatting. Ghostface reveals that her mom not only talks about her, but also their mutual love for horror movies. Let's take a stab at unraveling this. With Sam being estranged from her mother, why would she be telling Richie about her likes and dislikes? She wouldn't, so this is not Richie on the phone. The person on the phone could have knowledge of this because when they were younger, they hung out in the same crowd, and let's face it, if she had a thing for Billy, it's likely Stu was around, and that they all shared the same interests. We find out later that Richie was with Sam at this time, during the call, and while he could have easily snuck off to make the call, one would have to think that an extended bathroom break would have prompted a "Hey honey, are you okay in there?" And eventually this would have looked suspicious if Sam were to think back to it. Especially after Dewey asked where Richie was during the call.
Certain rules to surviving a stab movie. Believe me, I know. Rule number 1, never trust the love interest. They seem sweet, caring, supportive, and then welcome to Act 3 where they're trying to rip your head off.
I was with Sam in Modesto when Tara was attacked.
And let me guess, you were just in the other room, conveniently unaccounted for when she was attacked at the hospital.
Okay, do I have to take this from shitty Sam Elliott over here, or what?
We also know that it cannot be Amber on the phone, because just before she attacks Tara, she would have been heard talking from the next room, or was it Amber? Either way, we can confirm that there is a secret accomplice again, and who that is will be revealed shortly. After Ghostface reveals himself on the phone, they play a game where Tara has to name the killer from Stab 1, but she gets it wrong, only identifying Billy Loomis, something that angers Ghostface.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tara, but that's just not correct.
What? No, it is. It is, that is right.
The correct answer is Billy Loomis and Stu Macher. There are 2 killers in the original Stab.
Tara runs for the door but is met by a Ghostface who stabs her in the stomach. As she stumbles backwards, she goes to arm the security system, but every time she does, it's disarmed. How would Ghostface know the code to the security system? Unless it was a close friend of the family, or possibly a love interest of Tara, meaning it is very likely that Amber knew this code. But even though Tara is distracted by the security system, Amber would not have been able to have snuck into the house with how quickly the alarm was being disarmed. Plus, with most alarm systems, if not all, you cannot set an alarm with one of the sensors open. So the ghost face that attacks Tara is already in the house and has been. That ghost face is likely Stu, and those who theorized that Stu was the ghost face in the hospital can rejoice, as this theory is about to be proven. The ghost face mask is 10 inches in length. Amber is taller than Tara, but not by much. Tara is 5 feet 1 and Stu is 6 feet 4, to put this into perspective. Here is a pic of Jen next to Matthew Lillard, and poor Jen is an inch shorter than Tara. The ghost face that grabs Tara from behind lifts her up towards him, revealing about 8 or 9 inches of the mask standing over her. With Ghostface lifting her up onto her toes, we would get our height difference of over a foot, meaning that this is Stu. When Stu slowly walks behind Tara, who is crawling away, he dangles the knife between his fingers, letting it fall into his hand in a striking motion, something we will see again. Things become personal after Stu's nephew is killed, and we will get to that in a few. The day after his death at the Meeks' home, Mindy explains the rules of a ritual, and how the characters would be all connected. Richie asks how Vince would be connected, prompting a few interesting responses. In our friend group, only Amber knows the connection and says Vince is related to Stu. Lizzie asks who Stu is, confirming that in the town of Woodsboro, someone with influence has tried to make Stu's name go away. Maybe his parents, like we discussed in part 1. Dewey answers her question by referring to Stu as
He's Billy Loomis's accomplice, a real Looney Tune.
He says this in the present tense, meaning that Stu is alive. We would have to figure that not only has Stu's plan for a sequel has taken an unexpected turn, it has angered him, because it is very likely that Richie killed Vince, because he is not familiar with the locals like Amber is, which is also why Judy's death feels different. Ghostface is filled with rage this time, and we know from how Stu dangled his knife in the attack on Tara that this is Stu as well, because he repeats this motion here. Another clue that this is Stu is before he kills her and Wes. He calls to taunt Judy by referencing the movie Psycho, something we discussed in previous parts of this series.
Can't get him on the phone, can you? He must be busy.
How do I know you're anywhere near him?
Ever seen the movie Psycho?
We also know that Stu is likely acting alone, because unlike previous kills, especially Christine's, he is not watching Wes in the bathroom while he talks to Judy on the phone. After the Hicks massacre, Sam arrives on the scene and calls Richie, telling him to get over to the hospital Richie at the time, is watching a YouTube video on Stabbath where we see the thumbnail with the title, "Did the real-life Stu Macher survive?" Stu's killing spree continues at the hospital, where he kills a security guard and attacks Richie and Tara. It is safe to say that up until this point, Richie had not met Stu, because his reaction to seeing him in the hall is similar to when he met Dewey for the first time. He was wide-eyed and breathing heavy, in awe of seeing a legacy character. Dewey manages to fend off a Ghostface attack and shoots in, but Stu is wearing a bulletproof vest, something he took from the trunk of Judy's car, and instead of leaving an unconscious Ghostface behind, he says,
The head.
What?
You have to shoot him in the head, or they always come back.
Dewey, who gives a fuck?
I do.
No, Dewey!
having already mentioned Stu being alive at the Meeks' home, and now having physically fought with him, it is possible that Dewey, like Randy and Sidney before him, realized that he was fighting Stu. But this time Ghostface gets the best of him. He stands over Dewey as he overpowers him, driving him down just before he guts him from the groin to the sternum, just like Casey was, and just like Stu bragged about the day after her death.
Randy. They didn't ask me if I like to hunt.
It's because there's no way a girl could have killed him.
That is so sexist. The killer could easily be female. Basic instinct.
That was an ice pick. Not exactly the same thing. Yeah, Casey and Steve were completely hollowed out. And the fact is, it takes a man to do something like that.
It is obvious from Ghostface's hide we can link him to Stu. Later at his old home, Amber is hosting a party and we hear someone say, "Hey Freeman, cool house," which she acknowledges with a sly look. We know it was an Easter egg dropped in, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's Stu waiting to make his return, like Amber foreshadows later. As everyone converges on Stu's old house, and our killers are revealed, we begin to learn their motive and backstories. Amber reveals that she met Richie through a Stab Reddit page, just like Mrs. Loomis did with Mickey. The same page Richie shares the details for his movie, and most likely the same page that Jill and Charlie were going to upload their footage. Richie talks about making a good sequel, and Amber elaborates on the problem with the Stab movies is.
The biggest problem with the Stab movies is there's no Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. No bad guy to keep coming back.
That there is no bad guy to keep coming back. And if their motive was to make a sequel to the original, that meant that there had to be a bad guy that would come back. Otherwise, they were contradicting their own motives. Like with Mrs. Loomis, someone interfered and killed his followers.
I still prefer the Papadoo.
Sure, Billy had a daughter. We all knew this, and we all saw her potential. But what we didn't know was the darkness that lurked within her, ready to unleash a terror we could never have imagined. With Dewey being dead, it was going to get tougher to draw Sidney out of hiding. In our next episode, we see a familiar death blow when Ghostface looks to draw Sidney out by killing Gale.
Fuck you!
In Part 6, not only do you see our shrine, but the truth behind the cover-up is revealed. In our final episode of Stu's Clues, we learn that the disciples of Ghostface are operating stronger than ever before. We meet Jason, who kills his first victim, but then finds his partner Greg's body in the fridge. They were sloppy and had to be dealt with by another Ghostface. His dying words are about finishing Richie's movie. Just like Richie, he made it about something else.
But we have to finish the movie.
It was getting harder to find Sidney, but there was still a way. But first, some loose ends had to be tied up, because Sam and Tara have become the new heroes in his story, and no one changes his story. It just so happens that those loose ends and Gale are in the same city. After a few bodies are found and an attack in the bodega, Kirby arrives in New York. She now works for the FBI. she reveals something we have known for years.
Special Agent Kirby Reed, FBI. I work out of the Atlanta office.
You lost.
Your two Vics were residents of my city before they moved here for college. I have been investigating their online activity for the past few months.
Why?
They take a special interest in Ghostface attacks.
However, as we can clearly see on the crime board, Stu is dead, or is he? Because as Kirby talks about the killers and their connections to the Carpenter sisters, her facial expression changes from one of confidence to concern, as she stares in the direction of Billy and Stu's pictures. As things begin to unfold, we can see that Stu's influence and direction becomes more evident when they fake Quinn's death and stage the crime scene with a fake body. Not only did Billy and Stu attempt this, but then having Stu's own murder covered up by his parents, he would be able to advise on how to do it. With Ethan being in department, and the possibility that his father was on the clock, working, this Ghostface is likely to be Stu, because when Ghostface stabs Annika, he drives the knife into her stomach, and begins to cut upwards like he would have done to Casey and Dewey. The next morning, Dale leads everyone to the shrine of Ghostface, where it is filled with the evidence from all of the murders, along with some fan art. There are a few things to take note of here. In Principal Hembry's case, we see a drawing of Hembry lying on the floor after he was stabbed, but Hembry's body was discovered hanging from the flagpole.
No. Listen up. They found Principal Henry dead. He was gutted and hung from the goalpost on the football field.
And then we see a drawing of Sydney practicing for her play at Windsor College. How would these two little details be known by Richie? They wouldn't be. Only Hembry's killer would know, and only a person watching in the shadows at the college. That would mean it would have to be the same person, so the only person who would know the details would be Stu. Also, one key piece of evidence missing, or maybe it is replaced. Stu's sweater is not in the shrine, but his smoking jacket is. Now, for the majority of Stu's party, he is wearing his smoking jacket, meaning all of his guests would have seen him wearing that over his sweater instead of just seeing him wear the sweater, making it more plausible for people to look back and say, yeah, that is what Stu was wearing. So he must be dead because it's with other evidence. Mindy is sitting in front of the TV when Kirby sits down behind her. Stu becomes the topic of conversation before Kirby quickly changes topic.
TV that killed Stu Macher.
If you believe he's dead.
I hear you're a horror fan.
It's been said.
Notice the expression on Kirby's face when Mindy responds. It is similar to the one at the police station, and it would appear that she is no longer sure herself. With the FBI, Kirby would have never seen Stu's body because she was too young, so she can only go by what is told to her, and this is why she has no rebuttal from Mindy, because deep down inside, she isn't sure. Just like Sydney wasn't when she spoke to Ghostface in Hollywood.
You're not hearing things. How do you know I'm not someone in your head? Somewhere you know.
Don't come here, Sydney!
Stewie!
Or do you?
You're dead.
And just like Randy seemed to.
Why are you even here, Randy? You'll never be the leading man.
Fuck you!
No matter how hard you try, you'll never be the hero, and you'll never, ever get the girl.
Hey!
And why Dewey went back for the headshot.
The head.
What?
You have to shoot him in the head, or they always come back.
Dewey, who gives a fuck?
I do.
No, Dewey!
They each knew that something seemed familiar. If you have seen Dave and Jen's previous video on how Stu survived, you will know that they debunked how the weight of the TV and that their electricity could have killed him. But they didn't know about this next clue. The TV is smashed in, and unless Stu's head exploded, that would not have happened. In fact, if you take a baseball bat to the tube, it will not break, nor with a sledgehammer. Dropping the TV tube down will not even shatter it. Now see, this TV was damaged after it was recovered from Stu's house, and the only reason that would be done is to help create evidence of his death. The most damning clues to Stu's death being a cover-up comes at Gail's apartment, where there are two Ghostfaces inside. Remember, Ethan and his father are at the park. Their only ride to get to Gail is with Kirby in the surveillance van. One Ghostface calls her on the phone to distract her while the other kills her boyfriend. This Ghostface has direct knowledge of never having talked to her before, something only a killer who has been there from the beginning would know, almost as if they had planned out how each scene would play out in Stu's sequel. Like Ghostface did with Randy and Sydney, his conversation is about the past and how she has benefited from it.
Don't you know the legacy characters are disposable now? Nobody cares about last century's heroes.
And why bother with me at all?
Call it nostalgia. Or maybe you deserve to be punished for all that money you made off the misery of others. Maybe it's time someone made a buck reporting your death.
But he can only get so personal as he did not grow up with Gail. So he brings up Dewey, which would be his only weapon against her. And while describing his death, he chuckles for a moment.
How does it feel to lose the only man who ever loved you?
Fuck you!
How does it feel to know that you weren't there for him at the end? Not there to give him comfort as he died screaming in his own gut.
You're the one who's gonna die screaming.
And out of all our killers, only Stu indulged in the pleasures of watching his victims squirm. Only he gave subtle clues that he was the killer, like at the fountain. Stu wanted fame while Billy wanted revenge. After Gail's boyfriend is tossed through the bookcase, we see Ghostface step out from behind it, wiping the blood from the knife, like only Stu has done in the past. This would be Stu too, because how would Quinn throw a lifeless body like that? Ghostface chases Gail through the apartment. She manages to get the upper hand by getting her gun, shooting him through the door and causing him to flee. Gail goes to find him. She thinks he is hiding, only for Ghostface to spring out, knock her to the ground, and do something we haven't seen any other Ghostface with the exception to one. And that is clasp the knife in both hands while raising their arms into the air to deliver one last fatal blow. Just like Stu did when he attacked Billy to fake his death, and also when he attacked Sydney in her home. We know it was Stu attacking Sydney because he says easy, easy while running up the steps. Just like when he was in school and Tatum hit him in the head with her lollipop.
Stupidity leak.
Easy.
Didn't hear it. Listen closely as I play it again, with the vocals turned up. Our final clues are out of pure speculation and come in the shrine where the students try to emulate their teacher. First is after Chad is attacked by two Ghostfaces. We see them both turn towards Sam and Tara to wipe their knives clean, just like Stu did when he attacked Billy to fake his death. Quinn also tries to spin the knife in her hand like Stu would have done when attacking Tara and killing Judy and Dewey, only she does it in reverse. And finally, Quinn is wearing Stu's mask, who she reveals to be her favorite. Could he mean something more to her? Could Stu have charmed his way into a relationship with her and used that as a way to manipulate the entire family? I guess we will have to wait and see how this story unfolds. Found something we missed? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to stab the like button and subscribe. Happy holidays, and maybe Dave will see you next year.